realized that we had weeks of free time due to the coronavirus, we knew we had to make good use of it. We spent hours scouring Google Earth for a wilderness area to explore. We settled on the desert wilderness just to the east of Lake Powell in the Four Corners region, where there is nothing but slick rock as far as the eye can see. Solomon, Lorenzo, and I packed our bags and got our bikes ready for one of the most memorable adventures yet. We planned and prepared carefully this time, because we knew if something went wrong, we'd be hundreds of miles from help in the middle of the desert. We planned our routes as best we could from Google Earth, making sure we'd have enough gas in our bikes to complete the trip each day. It was the middle of the night when we arrived in the area, and we didn't get the truck as far as we'd hoped. The road quickly turned into an impassable trail for the heavy load. We unloaded the bikes and slept in the bed of the truck. In the morning, we got ready as fast as possible and headed towards an area that looked like a giant rock half-pipe from Google Earth. We knew the general direction and hoped to find some sort of trail that would get us close. It quickly got very difficult when the trail turned to pure slick rock and became very technical. Solomon was riding an 85 for the first time, and Enzo was on the 250 that I normally ride. And both of them had a very hard time at first, especially Lorenzo, as he could only touch the ground with his toes. By noon, we had found our first destination, and we were ecstatic. We couldn't believe that we'd made it to the exact spot we'd found on Google Earth so quickly. The place was just like we had imagined it. It really was like a giant, slick rock halfpipe. We spent about an hour riding the petrified dunes that surrounded it. After lunch, we set out looking for some pools of water trapped in the rock we had seen just west of there. We found them, and boy did we feel like kings as we played there. It was gorgeous, and it felt good to wash off a bit. The second day was the hardest, and we knew it would be. We were off to find what looked like a natural arch we could just barely make out from Google Earth. It was at the limit of what our bikes could do with the gas we could carry. And it was across some of the most technically demanding terrain I had ever ridden. It was particularly tough for the boys with bikes that were so big for them. At about noon, we weren't even close, and the boys had fallen so many times that they were ready to throw in the towel. I talked them into continuing, and we were all glad that we did. took the bikes as far as we dared, fearing we wouldn't have enough gas to get back. We continued on foot as we knew we were close. We walked down one canyon towards the arch, only to find it was impassable without ropes. So we hiked out and headed down an adjacent canyon. The boys wanted to quit several times, and I was worried that we wouldn't make it back before dark, but we kept going. When we came around the corner and saw the arch for the first time, we couldn't contain our joy. It was even better than we had imagined. There were several pools just up from the arch and one below it as well. This was the pinnacle of our trip, and suddenly all of the falls and worrying, it all melted away as we enjoyed the moment playing in the pools and photographing the arch. We knew we couldn't stay long though, as we'd be racing the sun on the way back. We made incredible time on the way back though, and the boys were really hitting their stride on their bikes. I had never seen them ride so well. Just when it looked like we were going to make it back to camp before dark, disaster struck. Solomon crashed hard and landed right in the middle of cactus. We spent the last few precious rays of light picking cactus out of Solo's back. We got out our lights and limped back to camp about 45 minutes after dark, extremely proud of ourselves. That day was a real test of endurance and grit that paid out handsomely. The following day, we took it easy and headed up the road to a lookout point where we could see all the way over to Monument Valley. It was an easy ride, but the view was spectacular. We got back to camp early and packed up to move camp for the next day. In the morning, we followed a wash as far as we could on our bikes and then set out on foot towards a deep canyon we wanted to explore. It took all day to get there, but we finally made it, and it was stunning, with the green grass, the red cliffs, and the blue sky. We returned to camp pretty beat, but we did have enough energy to explore some petrified dunes near camp, which turned out to be pretty awesome. The next day, we moved camp once more to the Valley of the Gods. We'd seen some beautiful photos of this area and wanted to experience it for ourselves. On the way out of the wilderness area, still about 20 miles from any paved road, my transmission started to fail. Luckily, it limped out of there after completely shutting the truck down and refusing to start several times. It was a Saturday, so there wasn't much else to do other than to keep pushing on as far as we could. We made it to the Valley of the Gods in time to ride the entire valley with our bikes. On the way back to camp though, Solo's bike crapped out. I went on and then picked him up with the truck. We sure are lucky nothing like that happened out in the wilderness area. We made camp in the Valley of the Gods and enjoyed some of the most beautiful scenery I had ever seen. The next day, we beelined it back to Oklahoma, praying the whole time the transmission would make it. And it did. What a trip.